Corporate governance can be either internal or external. Corporate charters and bylaws or board of directors and internal audit functions are internal. Corporate charters means corporate, what we say, MOM, Memorandum of Fund Association, or AOA, Articles of Association. These are the corporate charters. This and the bylaws of the organization, which employees or whoever dealing with the companies should follow. Then board of directors, the orders from the board of directors, the decisions from the board of directors, then the internal audit functions will ensure that there is corporate governance. We are strictly following all the regulations. Then laws, regulations, and government regulators who enforce them are external factors. Governance practices. Governance practices reflect the organization's unique culture and largely depend on its effectiveness. So organizational culture means sets value, objectives, and strategies, defines roles and behaviors, measures performance, and specifies accountability. So, for example, to have a corporate governance in your organization, the organization should set their own values. What are their objectives, strategies that should be set forward by the organization? Then these objectives or strategies should define what are the roles and what should be done by the people, or processes should be mentioned. Then these processes or performance should be measured. Then it should be also specifying to the accountability, who is responsible for what. Like, for example, if you are taking a decision regarding the taxation, then who is responsible? Whether the CEO is responsible or CIO is responsible for the IT securities and all, that should be mentioned. Thus, the culture determines the degree of sensitivity of social responsibility. Then governance practice may use various legal forms, structures, strategies, and procedures. They ensure that the organization complies with society's legal and regulatory rules, satisfy the general accepted business norms, ethical practices, principles, and social expectations of society, provides overall benefit to society, and enhances the interest of the specific stakeholder in both the long and short run, and reports fully and truthfully to its stakeholders, including the public, to ensure accountability for its decisions, actions, and performances. So then, one more thing: why we should have governance in an organization? Governance are the policies and sets of rules which should be followed. Okay, so when we, for an organization, if you want to check whether they are having corporate governance, the things we should check is that whether they are complying with the legal rules, whether the organization's policies is accepted by the society. Like, for example, if you are coming to accounts part, that gap should be followed. Then legally all the taxes should be paid properly, returns should be filed. Then we are not making any illegal activities or illegal payments is done by the organizations. So this all shows how much we are responsible to the society. Then governance applies to all organizational activities. Thus, its process provide overall direction for risk management activities. Internal control activities are in turn a key element of risk management. They implement the organization's risk management strategy. When we have governance, it gives a guideline which should be followed. So when we have a guideline, we can manage our risk. Then this risk should be controlled. We should have a control mechanism that's through by internal control systems. Then governance in corporations. Unlike a sole proprietorship or a general partnership, a corporation is a legal entity created under authority of a state statute to carry out the purposes pertained by the statute and the articles of incorporation. The corporation ordinarily is treated as a legal person with rights and obligations separate from its owners and managers. So when an organization, when we register a company, there the policy is that the concept is that corporation is different, managers and owners are different. So that's why when there is a legal consequence arises, the legal consequences directly will not involve the owners or managers. The case or legal case will be going against the corporation only. Why? Because they are having a separate legal entity classification. So they are a separate legal person. Then corporations are governed by shareholders, that means owners, who elect a board of directors and approve fundamental changes in the corporation structure. So part of the governance, from where it starts, the shareholders will elect the board of directors. The board of directors, in turn, what they will do, they will put forward the principles, policies for the organization, and they recruit corporate officers like CEO, CFOs, and CIO. They will recruit CEO. Then CEO will recruit CIO and CFOs, and these people will again recruit the lower level managers who are working for the then. Corporations are governed by shareholders who elect a board of directors and approve fundamental changes in the corporate structure. Directors establish corporate policies, adapt bylaws, and elect or appoint corporate officers who carry out policies in the day-to-day management of the organization. Incorporation may be in any state. We can register a corporation or a company in any state. Articles of incorporation must be filed with the Secretary of State or another designated official. The article must include the following. So, what are the requirements? Contents should be there in the articles of incorporation. That is the company's name, corporation's name. Then, number of authorized shares of stocks. Then, street address of the corporation's initial registered office, name of the registered agent at that office, name and address of each incorporators. Then these requirements is important. You might get one question from this area also. Okay. Then bylaws. Bylaws govern the internal structure and operations of the corporation. Initial bylaws are adopted by the incorporators or the board. They may contain any provision for managing the business and regulating the entities affair that does not conflict with the laws or the articles. So personal policies and procedures are integrated to an efficient control environment. They influence the control consequence of personnels. So what happens when we part of the governance? For an organization to be governed, first the organization should fulfill the laws of the land. We should follow the laws. Second thing is the articles of incorporation. Articles of incorporation, whatever mentioned in the articles of incorporation, that the organization should follow. Then the lower level then comes the bylaws. Below the bylaws comes the rules, policies, and procedures which should be followed by the personnel. Clear? So when we are creating a policy, it should not override the bylaws, and the bylaws which you are preparing, it should not override articles of incorporation, and articles of incorporation should not override the law of the land. Clear? For example, you are having you mentioned some policies in the bylaw or some rules in the bylaws which is against to the articles of incorporation. Then what you have to follow is you should follow the articles of incorporation, not the bylaw, for that particular point. Clear? Then corporate governance process. Governance has two major components: strategic direction and oversight. So strategic direction determines the business model, overall objective, the approach to risk taking, and limits of organization conduct. Then oversight is the governance component with which internal auditing is most concerned. It is also the component of which risk management and control activities are more likely to be applied. The elements of oversight are risk management activities performed by senior management and risk owners, and internal and external assurance activities. Then board is the source of all overall direction to and the authority of management. It also has the ultimate responsibility for oversight. Directors have a fiduciary duty to the organization. So board is the one who is directing the organization. They are the one who is taking the main decision, the organization, not the day-to-day activities, not the day-to-day decisions. Then ultimately, who is responsible for the oversight of all these activities, organizations? That is the board. Board should take the responsibility of everything happening in the organization. Then directors have a fiduciary duty. Fiduciary duty means it is not a written duty, or it's not in the, for example, JD. Okay, job. It will not be mentioned in the job description. That's called the fiduciary duty, which comes to a person without any legal format, without any contract. That's called the fiduciary duty. That is, the directors should take decisions which is most favorable for the organization, not to the directors. Okay, so then, and whatever decision he or she is taking should be in good faith that the organization will get benefit out of this. Then another responsibility is to identify stakeholders, whether directly involved in the business, indirectly involved, or having influence over the business. The board must determine the expectation of stakeholders and the outcomes that are unacceptable. The most important function of the board's audit committee is to promote the independence of the external and internal auditors from undue influence by management. A related function is support for the recommendations made by the auditors. So what happens? The board of directors will be, for example, there is 10 board of directors. Then out of this 10 board of directors, they will form one audit committee. They are the one who is responsible for the internal and external audits. Okay, so they are to the audit committee, the external auditors or internal auditors submit their audit report. Then we will have a risk committee. They are the one who is responsible for the risk of the organization. Then a remuneration committee will be there in big organization. They are the one who is fixing the remuneration for CEOs, CFOs, and CIOs. Then management performs day-to-day governance functions and determines what specific risks are to be managed, who will be risk owners, that means who is responsible for that risk, and how specific risk will be managed. And the functions of risk owners include evaluating the adequacy of the design of risk management activities and the organization's ability to carry out them as designated, designed. Then determining whether risk management activities are operating as designed. Then establishing monitoring activities, ensuring that information to be reported to senior management and the board is accurate, timely, and available. Risk committee may be created that identifies risk, key risk, connects them to risk management process, delegate them to risk owners, and consider whether tolerance levels designated to risk owners are consistent with the organization's risk appetite. Then, governance expectations include tolerance levels must be periodically re-evaluated by the board and senior management. The result may be change in the risk management activities. So, do you know what is risk tolerance and risk appetite? Risk tolerance is the maximum risk we can take, and appetite is our capacity of taking a risk. Okay, so how much risk we will absorb. Like for example, sometimes we are putting firefighting equipments all over the premises, but we left some area which is not an important place. So if a fire happens there, whatever risk happening there, we are ready to accept it. That's called the risk appetite, the risk we are willing to take. Okay, that internal control. An organization establishes a system of internal control to help its management it manage many of the risk it faces. Statements of audit standards define internal risk as follows: a process affected by those charged with governance, management, and other personnel that is designated to provide reasonable assurance about the achievements of the entity's objective with regard to the reliability of financial reporting, effectiveness and efficiency of operations, and compliance with applicable law and regulations. Internal control our safeguarding of assets against unauthorized acquisition, use, or disposition may include controls relating to financial reporting and operating objectives. Then, the Committee of Sponsoring Organizations of the Tradeway Commission COSO framework, definition of internal control is covered there. So, COSO framework is a model or framework prescribed by COSO, this organization. So, organizations in US are forced to take this model. They should follow the internal control system or framework mentioned by COSO. So we call it as COSO framework. And one such risk is that risk of fraud. For example, if in the internal control system, we should manage error as well as fraud. So here, this case of risk of fraud, the thing is that fraud is a deliberate action. It is a commitment. So when error happens, what happens is error can be found out easily. Why? Because there is no act to conceal it. But in the case of fraud, it is done purposefully. So whoever doing that fraud, they will try to hide it. So it is difficult to find out. So there, the internal control helps us to reduce the risk of fraud. Then, one such risk is the risk of fraud. Fraud differs from errors because it is intentional. It typically involves pressure or incentive to engage in wrongdoing and perceive opportunity to do so. We call this as fraud triangle. That means there is three components for a fraud to happen. There's one is the pressure of an employee to do a fraud. Okay, employee or management to do a fraud. Then the chance of doing the fraud. Okay, that means the opportunity to doing that. Then what else? And the benefit what he or she is going to arrive out of this, derive out of this fraud. So, for example, you're working as a what do we say, accountant in an organization. So, do you make any fraudulent financial statement like profit and loss account with a high profit, or showing a balance sheet with good fixed asset and all those stuff? Do you do that fraud or not as an employee? Will you commit this fraud? Anyone? Hello? Not clear with the question, Lawrence?
No.
No idea.
I would not do it.
Okay. What if okay, what if stealing some money from the organization as an employee? An employee will do it or not? Can an employee do that? Stealing money?
Employee can do.
Employee can do. But this employee, what is the chance of this employee doing a misstatement? That means altering the financial statement and showing a good profit. Will he get any benefit out of it?
No.
No. This benefits like misstatement of financial statements or fraud in the financial statements are done by management, right? Who's getting benefit out of that? The upper level managers or the directors itself, right? For example, their shares may be trading in a stock exchange. So what happens when you show a good profit? Their shares value is going to increase, correct? So these frauds are of two kinds, like done by the management and done by the employees. So employees frauds are relating to the concealment of assets, theft of assets and those stuffs. For the management, part of fraud is that alteration of the financial statements. So both cases, there should be these three factors should be available, like the fraud triangle, for a fraud to happen. So for example, an employee have an intention to do fraud, okay, like what we say, what was that? Okay, employee has a pressure to do that, okay, because he needs some money. Okay, so if we do the fraud, he will get some money. So that's the incentive or benefit he is going to arrive, but there is no opportunity. That means, for example, you lock the cash in the safe locker every day, so he don't have a chance to do that. So if the three scenarios will be there, then only we call it as fraud triangle. If the three scenarios of a fraud triangle is there, then we can call it as a high risk category of fraud. Then, so internal controls are designed to prevent the fraud. However, because of the concealment aspect of the fraudulent activity, controls cannot give absolute assurance that material frauds will be prevented or detected. Controls must be cost beneficial. They should not have an adverse effect on efficiency or profitability. For example, the audit committee might review the internal auditor's work schedule. Next comes the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. So, Foreign Corrupt Practices Act is an act which covers the bribe the US companies or any organization, any company who is listed in US. Uh, it, it may not be necessary that you are registered in US. Company who may be listed in US also fall under this category. So what happens is FCP Act says if an organization pays some bribe to a foreign official or for political party, then it will come under the FCPA Act. Okay, so we are supposed to pay bribe under FCPA Act. So Foreign Corrupt Practices Act enacted in 1977 has its origin in the Watergate investigation. The FCPA is designed to prevent secret payments of corporate funds for purposes that Congress has determined to be contrary to public policy, such as bribery of foreign officials. The Act amends the Securities Exchange Act of 1934 to prohibit domestic concerns engaged in interstate commerce, including any person acting on its behalf, whether or not being business overseas and whether or not registered with the SEC, from the offering or authorizing corrupt payments to any foreign officials, foreign political party, or officials thereof, candidate for political office in a foreign country. So here in this act, what all it covers? It covers bribe we are paying or any unauthorized payment or corrupt payments we are doing to a foreign official. Okay, what if your organization work in US and you bribe to a police officer in US? Will it cover here in Foreign Corrupt Practices Act? Hmm. Where did we reach? Okay, so the bribes which we pay to local police officers or local government officers will not cover under Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. It covers only payment to the foreign officials. So only political payments to foreign government officials are prohibited. Payments to foreign business owners or government officers are not addressed by the FCP Act. Corrupt payments are payments for the purpose of inducing the recipient to act or refrain from acting so that the domestic concern might obtain or retain business. So the FCPA prohibits a mere offer or promise of a bribe even if it is not consummated. That means FCPA prohibits that if I offer a bribe also is a crime under FCPA Act. Whether I paid or not, they will not check. If I offer, then it's a crime. So the FCPA prohibits payment of anything of value except for de-minimized gifts, like for example, hospitality tokens, like a token of hospitality, like when we go there, or a foreign official come to the organization, we gave him tea, coffee, and small gift of minimum values, then it is not a problem. Then payments are prohibited if the person making them know or should have known that some or all of them would have been used to influence a governmental official. Sometimes what happens when I start a business in a foreign country, for example, I am a US based company. I want to start an office in Sri Lanka or a branch in Sri Lanka. Then what normally I will do? I will find an agent there who can do every work for me, right? There will be organization who is setting companies for the foreign companies. So what we do, we make payment to them, and they are the one who is taking the offices, furnishing, and taking the license and all those stuff. So as a US officer, US company employee, if I'm making a payment to them, okay, for bribing, then I will be convicted under FCPA Act. And I didn't know that the money which I am sending, for example, I sent him $50,000. Out of this, 25,000 is for furnishing and 25,000 is for bribe. I didn't know that. But as an accountant, when I send money, I should know for what purpose I am sending. Then also I will be convicted under FCPA Act. Clear? Foreign officials do not include clerical or ministerial employees. Examples, payment made to a clerk to expedite the process of goods through customs may not be prohibited by the act. Like for example, we call it as grease payments. Like it means to make the function smooth. For example, one of some of our goods arrive to the port in the foreign country, and the officer sitting there, he asked for bribe to release the goods. But our documents are 100% clear, but only because of this individual is asking for bribe, we are forced to pay. So what happens? We will pay them. So such payments will not cover under FCPA Act. Then such payments are not prohibited as long as the recipient has no discretion in the carrying out a governmental function. Then payments that are allowed under the written law of the foreign country are also not prohibited. Regardless of whether they have foreign operations, all public companies must make and keep records, books, records, and accounts in reasonable detail that accurately and fairly reflect transactions and disposition of assets. All public companies registered under 1934 must devise and maintain system of internal accounting controls sufficient to provide reasonable assurance that transactions are excluded in accordance with management general or specific authorization. Transactions are recorded as necessary to permit preparation of financial statements in conformity with generally accepted principles or any other criteria applicable to such statements, and maintain accountability for assets. Access to assets is permitted only in accordance with the management's general or specific authorization. The record accountability for assets is compared with the existing assets at reasonable intervals, and appropriate actions is taken when with respect to any differences. Then comes the penalties. The penalties for an individual for each criminal violence for the corrupt practices provisions are as fine up to $100,000 or imprisonment up to 5 years or both. Then a corporate may be assigned a fine of up to 2 million for violating of the same session. Then fine imposed upon individuals may not be paid directly or indirectly by an employer. That means, for example, as an accountant, I made some corrupt payments on behalf of the company. Then company will get 2 million fine, and I will get, if these payments are authorized by the top level managers or directors, then that means the company is also aware about this payment. In addition to this 2 million for the company, I will be fined for $100,000 or 5 years of imprisonment or both. So this $100,000 company can't pay for on behalf of me. I should find it from my personal estate. Okay, so that is what they say, directly or indirectly. Directly, company pay on behalf of me, or company pay me 100,000 and I pay to the government. It is not permissible. Yeah. The implication of FCPA extend well beyond. What about managers who authorize? Yeah, managers who authorize this payment will also come under the personal. Clear. Like for example, I am the one who is preparing the payment and I did the payment as an accountant. And this payment is authorized by the one of the director and one of the manager. Then these both guys will also fall under this fine of 100,000 and 5 years of imprisonment. Clear, Asad? All individuals who is responsible for this will come under that category. That the implication of FCPA extend well beyond its anti-bribery provisions. All American business and business people who are involved. Management is particularly affected. The responsibility for internal control is not new, but the potential for civil and criminal liabilities represent an added burden. The impact of the law and the threats it ambiguous pose may alter business operations. Management might decide to abandon direct selling operations in foreign countries in favor of the use of foreign agents in hopes that it might lessen their reason to know. Then a written code of ethics and conduct is necessary. This code should be communicated and monitored by internal auditors for compliance. The code might include an explanation of the FCP and its penalties. A firm may require written representation from employees that they have read and understood the provisions of the code. Written representation regarding compliance might also be requested at future times. Foreign agents should be made aware of the prohibitions of the indirect payments. Then comes the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. So the US government brought Sarbanes-Oxley Act because um, there was a lot of scams happening in US, especially in the listed companies. What they were doing off-balance sheet loans they were taking, and they were not reporting those loans. Lot of illegal payments were doing. So ultimately, what happens? For example, when a company pays bribe to any of the foreign officials or anyone for illegal payments they are done, two things happen. One, the credibility of the company is questioned. Second thing, whose money is losing? The investors' money is losing by these kind of payments. Okay. In addition to that, Sarbanes-Oxley came because of listed companies who were doing a lot of frauds. So Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002 was a response to numerous financial reporting scandals involving large public companies. The Act contains provisions that impose new responsibility for issuers and their auditors. So Sarbanes-Oxley Act uh, implies to who? Public limited companies and their auditors. Okay, but for FCPA Act, it involves all the local companies, whoever whether listed or non-listed, and any foreign company who is listed there in US will be falling under the FCPA Act. Then the Act, FCPA Act created the Public Companies Accounting Oversight Board (PCAOB), which establishes an audit standard for registered public accounting firms to apply in their audits of issuers. Then the Act requires that each members of the issuers audit committee be an independent member of the board of directors. To be independent, a director must not be affiliated with or receive any compensation from the issuer. Additional requirements are as follows. Like the audit committee must consist of at least 3 fully independent members. At least one member of the audit committee must be a financial expert. The audit committee must be directly responsible for appointing, compensating, and overseeing the work of independent auditors. The independent auditor must report directly to the audit committee, not to the management. The audit committee must also must establish procedures for the received retention and treatment of compliance uh, receiving regarding the audit, internal control, or auditing matters, and the confidential anonymous submission of employees' concerns regarding questionable accounting or auditing matters. Then, if you are appointed as a auditor in a public limited company, then what are the non-audit services which is prohibited for you? So prohibited non-audit services under section 201 of the Servants Officer Act lists several activities that cannot be performed on behalf of the audit clients. An accounting firm may perform non-audit services like tax services for an audit client only if the activity is approved in advance by the audit committee of the client. Then audit partner rotation. So for example, if you are in an audit firm, you might have 5 or 10 audit partners. So every year, you should not send one partner for the audit. You should rotate the partners who is signing the audit report. It is under section 203 of the act requires that the audit lead auditor and the reviewing partner to be rotated off and of the audit so that the same individual is not supervising a client's audit for an extended period of time. Then the lead audit partner cannot perform audit services for more than 5 consecutive fiscal years of the audit client. Then corporate responsibility of a public company, that's section 202, requires periodic statutory financial reporting to include certain certifications. Then internal control reports, section 404 is that of the act requires management to establish and document internal control procedures and to include in the annual report a report on the company's internal control over financial reporting. So this internal control report should be signed by the CEOs because they are the one who is responsible for the internal audit, and I think directors also should comply with this. Then this report is to include a statement of management's responsibility for internal control, management assessment of the effectiveness of internal control as of the end of the most recent fiscal year, identification of the framework used to evaluate the effectiveness of internal control, then a statement about whether significant changes in controls were made after their evaluation, including any corrective actions, and a statement that the external auditors has issued an attestation report on management's assessment. Because of this requirement, 2 audit opinions are expressed, one on internal control and one on the financial statement. That's why here also when you see the audit report, we have 2 things, right? In audit report, we will say the financial statements are true and fair, and the organization's internal control is working properly. Have you seen an audit report like this with these 2 statements? So have you given management representation when you have audits in the organization? Okay, in the management's representation, they used to certify that they are having proper internal control system and what are the methods they adopted for the calculations and all those tests. Then the external auditor must attest to and report on management assessment. The auditor must evaluate whether the structure and procedures include records accurately and fairly reflecting the firm's transaction. Provide reasonable assurance that transactions are recorded so as to permit statements to be prepared in accordance with GAAP. The auditor's report also must describe any material weakness in internal controls. And the evaluation is not to be the subject of a separate engagement, but to be in conjunction with the audit of the financial statement. So the internal control evaluation should be the part of the normal audit conducted by the organization. So section 201 services outside the scope of practice of auditors. So what all services are prohibited for the auditors? There's the prohibited activities. Section 10A of the Securities Exchange Act 1934 is amended by adding the following: it shall be unlawful for a registered public accounting firm that performs for any issuer any audit requirements by the rules of the commission to provide to that issuer contemporaneously with the audit. Any non-audit service include bookkeeping or other service relating to the accounting records or financial statements of the audit client, financial information system design and implementation, appraisal or evaluation service, fairness opinion or contribution in kind reports, actuarial services, internal audit outsource services, management function or human resource, broker or dealer, investment advisor or investment banking service, legal service and expert service unrelated to the audit, and any other services that the board determines by regulation is impermissible. Pre-approval required for non-audit services. A registered public accounting firm may engage in any non-audit service, including service taxes, tax services that is not described above for an audit client only if the activity is approved in advance by the audit committee of the client. Then exemption authority, the board may on case-by-case basis exempt any issuer, public accounting firm or transactions from the provision of the extent to the extent that such exemption is necessary or appropriate in the public interest and inconsistent with the protection of the investors and subject to review of the commission. Sarbanes-Oxley section 203 audit partner rotation. A CPA firm must rotate audit partners so that the same individual is not supervising a client's audit for an extended period of time. It shall be unlawful for a registered public accounting firm to provide audit service to an issuer if the lead audit partner or the audit partner responsible for reviewing the audit has performed audit service for that issuer in each of the 5 previous fiscal years of that issuer. Balance will continue in next class. Okay.